Welcome to the Daoscape Arts podcast. This is part 2 of a 2-part podcast titled The Character of Zen Calligraphy, recorded at Calligraphy Master Paul Wang studio in Beijing, China. Paul teaches his meditative Insight Calligraphy method to Chinese and foreigners alike on a weekly basis, as well as taichi and other traditional Chinese arts. This episode covers choosing materials for writing calligraphy, how people new to Chinese culture relate to Chinese calligraphy, how the fine Chinese calligraphy brush was developed, and the necessary steps to mastering Zen calligraphy. And because it's such a fine medium, the finely tuned calligraphy brush and the watery ink, and the quality of the paper, would you say that it's difficult to replicate the same kind of results with pencil and paper? And by results, I mean like results in mind and body as well as in the created work, since the pencil or the watercolor brush aren't really a fine-tuned kind of gong fu tool.
Well, I think it also can feel something from his strokes and the outcome of strokes. It's harder than the ink painting, because ink painting, book one stroke and you can't cover it. Calligraphy also, you can't cover, you can't repeat. But that's easier. The watercolor and oil painting, cover and cover and cover and
layers.
Layers. That's the harder part.
But maybe harder in a different way, right? Like, because you only have one go, one try to get it right.
Yeah.
Then that can be another kind of difficulty.
Yeah.
So what would you say about this aspect of calligraphy where we're using words, and Buddhism and Taoism speak about creating some distance from symbols and words and speech because it doesn't represent the absolute truth of nature. And yet when we're writing calligraphy, it seems that we're kind of attached to these symbolic forms. Do you think there's a danger there with calligraphy that perhaps because there are so many layers of, profound skill in writing and then profound statement being made by the calligraphy piece, that the calligrapher must be very careful in the way that they practice?
You have to manage the degree. You can have you must set up relation with the poem, for example. You must understand it. And even you regard yourself as that poet. Then you know what about the deep meaning of and how to express that poem at that time, at poet's time. Then is my time to express it. Then that's easier to express in the way of that poem, that you are writing a poem.
So it's mainly poems that Zen calligraphers write?
Not only, but any meaning. For example, you write a motto or a Zen word. You must understand that. You can write one, for example, because there are many styles of calligraphy. You want to write a Zen word. It's very well known. One is wu, so none, or nothing. So you can write in different styles. But in different styles, you have to express the core, the same core. That's the difficult part. But you have to do that. You have to try.
Right.
In regular style is one stroke by stroke, or the cursive running very quick. And the core is the same. If you can't understand the core of Wu, you can't do that. If you understand it, you just use different media to express one thing.
Would you say that calligraphy has a very particular potential to help people bridge the gap between their social worlds of using language and then the world of kind of mind and body in nature beyond that? Or is it just because you went to a calligraphy school when you were very young that you've taken up this path, while other people could just become a monk and meditate in a monastery or practice tai chi in a park every day and achieve the same results? Or do you think calligraphy has a very special place in human culture because it deals with words, it deals with mind and body, and we can't ever avoid the social world?
Because calligraphy is so important role in Chinese culture. It's very special tool and a special paper and so long heritage, already generation by generation sealed in the Chinese mind. So basically or fundamentally they have good sense of calligraphy. No reason, always calligraphy, it means culture, it means you're well educated, you know beautiful things. Then it's easier for everybody, I think, most of the people.
But for foreigners, I think coming to China, it's a little difficult to get into the deeper side of traditional Chinese calligraphy.
Yeah. Not really. For Chinese, because of this, it seems there's no condition, to accept. So I just accept because of generation by generations. But as a foreigner, there is condition. Why write it? You have to ask. Why interested in that? Besides the character. Maybe something else. Or maybe I can't find something else through this media. I think sometimes it's easier for foreigner to understand deeper if they can really practice continuously. It's even easier. Because you already give up some concepts already. Chinese is full of concepts. If they didn't practice well, concepts, and many concepts are wrong. Then there's this barrier for them. So for me, when I taught Chinese students, I have to take some time to let these wrong view go, Take time. But for foreigner, I don't have to. It's brand new for them.
I found that when I began practicing calligraphy, the understanding of radicals and how they fit together to make a character, each piece of the character and the structure of that character was quite difficult to tune into intuitively. And it was only once I started learning how to write Chinese characters in Chinese language classes that became a little easier.
Sure. So if we can have enough time to study oracle or bronzeware, it will be better. More pictures, more abstract pictures.
Yeah. From a foreigner's perspective, or someone coming from outside of Chinese culture, when we see those very early Chinese pictographs, we think they look very similar perhaps to Egyptian or Mexican, ancient Mexican writing.
Not really. If you really study oracle for a certain time, if you study maybe, for example, 100 characters, for example, oracle, you will understand, it is different from Egyptian. It's very different. If you just have one or two, pictographic oracle, but most of oracle is not pictographic. It's a very abstract picture, meaning together, not shape. So it is different from Egyptian.
I think people in the West are mostly drawn to this kind of taichi, fluid, yet balanced kind of Chinese calligraphy. I think they feel this is the perfect ideal that all Chinese calligraphy should aspire towards if we're going to try to express ourselves artistically through writing using brush and ink.
The flowing sense of taichi or calligraphy, they may learn them easily. But most of the people didn't understand how the flowing become real flowing. It depends on the holistic balance. Taichi is like that. Calligraphy is like that. Holistic balance. Then flow. Otherwise, it's out of balance. That flow is out of balance. It's not taichi. It's not right writing.
So some people can kind of get caught up in the water-like quality of the flowing characters, but in a shallow way.
Yeah.
So they like this idea of being very free and flowing, but perhaps inside that idea there's no true anchor.
Yeah, right. But water has that, has weight. Has weight and soft body together. But we ignore it. We just see the shape of water, not the quality of water. But the quality of body, breathing, flowing, is coming. The same for calligraphy. And the same for many other sports, I think. Western sports, international, same.
Yeah, it's a flow experience.
Yeah, body, breathing, mental, together. Gymnastic, performance,
And so traditionally around Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, China, there were the four arts of the gentleman, which were painting, calligraphy, reading the classics, and I think the board game Go.
Oh yeah, 琴棋书画.
Do you encourage your students to also study in that way, in the same way as people did 1,000 years ago, combining arts together so that they can get some insight into all of those arts at the same time? Or do you think, well, this is the modern world and maybe they like playing basketball and let them get their flow from basketball and then hoping that they're going to make some connection with the flow in calligraphy? Do you think it's necessary to study old traditional Chinese arts in order to really excel at traditional Chinese calligraphy?
It's good to learn if you have time. But if you have no time, you should understand them. If you're just a calligrapher, you try to understand qin, string instrument, to listen more, to watch the performance, to communicate with musicians, or the pottery, do the pottery. You should understand wisdom, observe, has deep understanding. Then you can use it into your writing. They have same core or similar meaning inside.
So it's not necessary to study Tai Chi or these kinds of arts in order to be able to appreciate Insight Calligraphy?
Not really. If you can do it in the right way, it's good. Because you can understand and you can find, they are same. Tai Chi or Qigong or writing, using the same body, breathing, same state of mind. And you have more interest to practice that, to improve this, to practice this, to improve that.
And what about the quality of the materials that we should use? Because I've bought so many different brushes and asked you if they're any good. And so many times you've said they're not that good. And you told me that if the brush isn't such good quality, then the writer has to be more careful with how they use the brush. And in this famous Kung Fu movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, the woman played by Zhang Ziyi in that movie uses this sword called the Green Destiny Sword, and her master says to her that her ability is due to the fine quality of the sword that she's using. He says to her, well, you're only so good because your sword is so good. And do you think it can be the same case in calligraphy, that if you find an excellent brush, then your calligraphy can be excellent? If you pay enough money and find a good enough brush?
Yeah, I think good brush is really necessary. Because you use less energy to balance with brush, but to just directly express yourself with the strokes. Otherwise, you have to balance with this, with brush together with that stroke. If you write, especially when you're writing a regular style, it's stroke by stroke, normally it needs a good brush. Because you have to write very accurately, the angle and the thin and thicker. If the brush is like this, it's like a brush. It's hard.
It confuses me a little. How could the ancient people who developed these calligraphy brushes know when the brush was ideal for their purposes? Because surely they would have had to have experienced the ideal brush before they could create the ideal brush. So where did the first ideal come from when they were developing their brushes? How could they know when the brush that they were developing was good or bad?
Originally, the brush maker must be a calligrapher. So he know which kind of brush can write well.
But what kind of calligrapher? He must have been a very spiritually aware Zen calligrapher?
Not really Zen, but understand about the nature of things, the nature of, the characteristics of hairs, of bamboo, or wood, or of leaves. Because when making paper, leaves or barks, or straws, you understand them well.
So they were making paper?
Yeah, making paper.
Oh, right, to understand what kind of wood makes good paper.
Yeah, same as for making brush. Understand all these materials, sources.
But how do they know what they want to achieve with those materials?
Writing experience. Writing experience.
But they must have had a good brush before, right? They must be basing their ideals on...
I think it's not one person. Gradually.
Oh, little by little.
Yeah, generation by generation, then develop. I think the earliest brush is since maybe 3,000 years ago.
Well, 3,000 years ago.
Yeah, around 3,000 years ago. There is brush, like modern brush, sharp. It's a long time developing.
So they used a brush someone else made, and it had a certain aspect that they liked, and so they wanted to kind of increase that aspect and make a brush that has more of that aspect.
Yeah, and in different periods of history, the brush has different quality because the character is different, the way of writing is different, but the general core doesn't change. No changing. The basic shape, no changing. Maybe for some period they like softer one, So they use maybe the goat's hair. Or sometimes they feel need more elastic, so they may use the weasels or
Do you think maybe a Buddhist preferred a certain brush and a Taoist preferred a different other kind of brush, depending on how they want to express their own spiritual feelings?
I think it's personal, not really depend on Confucianism or Taoism. Very individual. And depends on which kind of style they prefer to write. Depends on that. And for me, sometimes I can't choose brush. Just now what you said, right? So I try to use that one to express in this brush way. So I try to practice that ability. So every brush has its range of ability.
The personality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's good for understanding all the brush, the good one or not so good, different hairs. And as a calligrapher, has his ability.
Would you say that's a big part of a calligrapher's practice? Needing to know what kind of brush is good when they need to replace their brush, and knowing where to find that brush or perhaps even make that brush, and testing out different kinds of brushes. Is that a big part of traditional Chinese calligraphy?
Also big. Because the best one and the so-so one, not so big gap. The best one is very fine. But so-so one is okay. Or the hair one is fine. Very fine. Yeah. It also depends on which kind of script you're going to write or which kind of work. If you want to write a very regular style sutra, for example, you may find a very fine brush, very, very neat, clean, clear one to write. Or if you want to write a poem, it doesn't matter. Or even if you want to find some brush not so well to express that poem, it's good. Too fine brush is not so good.
Interesting.
Some poem is expressing about the storm, the wind, or the sword dancing. You may use different brush to express different story.
And before, you've spoken about the differences between traditional Chinese and Japanese Zen calligraphy. What would you say is the main difference?
I think for Zen calligraphy, if we call it Zen calligraphy, it should be similar.
Right.
In the same state of mind to write. Straight mind. Straight. No thoughts. Just now. Brush. Life. Go. That's the same. But for Japanese calligrapher, there are two parts, I think. One is they study a lot from traditional ancient calligraphy. Study a lot, and they are wonderful. Then they express in a modern way. But they have very strong tradition, Chinese traditional calligraphy. Another part of Japanese, not really. They don't have to study too much about. They directly use a brush, because they have the background using brush.
Right.
At least since Tang Dynasty, right? This is like Chinese. Japanese also has basic sense of brush. And for Chinese calligrapher, I think also has these two group. One group is study traditional, then only traditional or modern. The other part is they just write freely, call it freehand.
Yeah.
No tradition. So I prefer the first one. They must have tradition. Why you have to have tradition? Tradition contains the nature. true nature and the outstanding virtue. That's why true nature and outstanding virtue in tradition. You must learn from that. And through that, you also study directly from nature, and Asian virtue become part of you. Then if you understand, that's not limit. They will not limit you. They will open a huge space for you. That's why the ones who didn't really study tradition, for one day, no way, no path anymore.
No way forward.
Yeah.
No way to develop.
Right, because they just depend on their characteristics, their emotion. They become boring, themselves become boring. No root.
No root may be in the infinity of nature.
Yeah, right.
Never being able to fall into that trap of arriving at any solid place.
So emotion is so limit. Or personal, temporary idea is so limit. It's very, very limited.
But they say that people can arrive at things in different ways, and there's no one true way of doing something. And perhaps if somebody's very playful and they're often changing how they do things, and they just enjoy that novelty that comes out from being very playful, maybe they can arrive naturally at the same place.
It depends on the potential ability of enlightening, direct understanding, or intuitive understanding, the level of that person. At very high level, he may touch or even reach the traditional outstanding part. If not, it just play. It's okay. Play.
So what do you think about the path to mastery in calligraphy, and what would you say to people who have very high aspirations and want to achieve the highest level possible through Insight Calligraphy, or a deeper spiritual way to practice traditional Chinese calligraphy? What does someone need to do in order to achieve mastery of traditional Chinese calligraphy within their lifetime?
To study the tradition as much as you can. I mean the best part of tradition, best part, the highest levels part. You don't have to practice all of them. You choose the highest one in different time. Just all of them.
Traditional calligraphy?
Yeah, traditional calligraphy in different part, highest levels. Then philosophy, good thinking about life and nature, observe nature. You must be very sensitive with nature. And with these three, thoughts, nature, understanding, practice traditional highest levels, works, then is the shortest way.
Can formal meditation help a lot with that process as well?
Yes, sure. If you have chance to practice meditation, it will help a lot. If you have more direct understanding, not through logical thoughts, directly get it, because of your sharper mind, perceive right away. For Asian masters' work, also for nature, also for understanding the deep philosophy, all these need that sharp, intuitive mind.
Well, I guess that's a good place to end. So thank you very much.
A pleasure.
This is the end of Podcast 3, Part 2, The Character of Zen Calligraphy with Paul Wang.